Good morning. Again, my name is Aaron Arnold, and I have the honor of serving as the executive director at Waukegan College. For those of you who don't know, we support first-generation Waukegan students as they follow their dreams through a college education. I want to start out by saying thank you to this congregation for your faithful and generous support through finances, through volunteers, through baked goods for our events, as well as being a co-sponsor of our college shower that sets up our rising freshmen for the beginning of their college career. We are so grateful for your partnership, for your love and action for our students and their families. When I saw the gospel reading for this Sunday, I knew right away that I wanted to use it as the basis for my message this morning. Now, in my experience, and I've been a fundraiser for 30 years, and no, I'm not going to ask you for money this morning, so don't worry. One of the most uncomfortable things for people to talk about is money, especially at church. And add to the fact that we are gathered here this morning in one of the top 50 wealthiest suburbs of America. In fact, number 30, according to what I read this year. But I'm not going to really talk about money, at least not directly, because I think that is actually a distracting part of this story. As I read the interaction between Jesus and this young man several times, the shocking part about giving away all the possessions, all of the money, waned a little bit, and I was drawn to other aspects of this conversation. Jesus, as we heard in the text, later debriefed this encounter with his disciples, which is also fascinating, but we only have time to focus this morning on the first part of the story. So let me recap. And I'm actually going to merge together the story as it's told in the Gospel of Mark and add some from the Gospel of Matthew, because I think it amplifies it. If you don't know, Mark historically was written first, Matthew was second, and was later and specifically directed to a Jewish population. So in recap, a person approached Jesus and asked how to have eternal life. Jesus replied by listing some commandments, and in Matthew concluded by saying, if you would be perfect, go sell what you possess and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come, follow me. In response to this gospel reading, I would like to share two observations and then wrap up our time with a few questions. My first observation centers on Jesus' response to the person's end game, their goal. The young man asked what was necessary to do to have eternal life. He was future-focused and trying to figure out how to ensure that he was checking all of the right boxes. Now, without explicitly saying it, Jesus reframed the question with his answer. After the exchange about following the commandments, which actually in the Gospel of Matthew includes one that is not a commandment, he says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus takes it to another level. He says, if you want to be perfect. Now, the Greek word that Jesus used in this text that is translated as perfect is teleos. But many scholars believe that a better translation than perfect is the word purpose. You see, too often, when religion, and I'm talking religion of all shapes and sizes, has a focus on perfection rather than purpose, it devolves into a list of rules, laws, or commands that need to be followed. And in the case of Christianity, many times following rules becomes more of a focus than following Jesus. What I mean is that when we take the relationship out of the reason the rules exist, we miss something. That reason, I believe, is not to check off a spiritual to-do list, but it's about ensuring that people are loved, cared for, and valued. When Jesus mentioned the golden rule, he wasn't adding to the list of commandments, he was summarizing them, just as he did in other instances. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Romans, also emphasized this same idea when he wrote, "Any other commandment are summed up in this word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself." Love is the fulfillment of the law. When our focus is on perfection, there also is the tendency to make what we do now as merely transactional, earning merit, salvation, or entrance into heaven in the future. But my friends, our spiritual journey is not about a checklist of rules to obey. It's not a form of eternal life insurance, but it's about living a life of purpose, which is a life of love in action. Purpose rather than perfection. The second observation is that purpose and people are inseparable. It's not only about me and my eternal life. I can't find purpose alone, isolated, or through being egocentric. Purpose is realized through relationships. If I could summarize Jesus' challenge to that young person, I would say, if you want to have purpose, leverage what you have to do the most good for the most people. Very similar to the words of the founder of the Salvation Army, Catherine Booth, who wrote, "There is no reward equal to that of doing the most good to the most people in the most need." Relationships also require us to be present. Purpose requires us to be anchored in the here and the now, not just concerned about the future. Purpose demands that we make the best use of resources that we have right now to love those around us. Bell Hooks, one of my favorite authors, a former professor at Berea College and an educational activist, described love as the will to extend one's self for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Listen to this part. Love is an act of will, namely both an intention and an action. Our purpose is about people, and it is fulfilled through acts of love. I see my job as the executive director at Waukegan College as how I live out my purpose. And at the heart of what I do, what we do, is love. Education is a means to an end. And that end is about following a dream and our students living out their purpose. When I have the opportunity to speak with our older students, late high school and college, I like to ask this question. How do you want to make the world a better place? Which is another way to ask, what is your purpose? How are you called to love people? So this morning, I'll conclude by asking you 3 questions. And don't worry, you don't have to answer them out loud. Who are the people that you are called to love? Who is God putting on your heart? How does your purpose include loving those people, meeting their needs? And lastly, how can you better use the resources that you have to live a life of purpose? Thank you for the opportunity to share this morning, and may God bless you even more than God already has as you seek to live a life of purpose, one that is filled with love and action toward the people you are called to love. Or as One of my favorite poets, Mary Oliver, wrote, "Tell me what it is you plan to do with your wild and precious life." Thank you very much.